Hello everyone, welcome to Abu Dhabi. We've been here today for first practice and second practice at Yas Marina circuit. Plenty of talking points, again dominated by the Max Verstappen row that he had with George Russell. Been rumbling on now, feels like eternity, but for 5 days it's still going on. Not the drivers talking this time, but the team bosses. This was Christian Horner's time to respond. He spoke to the press conference earlier on, and it was obviously a premeditated answer to one of the questions. Obviously, you'll remember that Toto Wolff referred to him as a yapping terrier on Thursday, which was in relation to Max and George sort of having a disagreement at the last race in Qatar. And Christian Horner's responded and said, "What did he say? I'd rather be a terrier than a wolf."
Yes, I mean, it was very much how many times had he been looking in the mirror practicing that line?
Yeah.
And got his jokes in about the terriers that he used to own, called Bernie Eccleston and Flavio Briatore. But yeah, it was interesting. I thought sort of trying to go high rather than sort of low. I think that's been sort of Red Bull's tactics from what I understand, talking to their communications people. It's just like, we don't feel the need to get involved in that sort of thing, and it's a shame for us because we love a good story that stirs the pot. But yeah, I think sensible in the end, sort of cooling of matters. But then we just never know if things are going to change when the drivers get together on the track. But Ben, you were in the room in the press conference. Yeah. How did that actually? Because obviously Wolff wasn't there. Horner was talking alongside Binotto and Stella. Like, how did it sort of land in the room? What was that?
It was. I mean, Christian precursed this by saying it's pantomime season. He has used that before at this race,
right?
And we all missed an opportunity.
He always uses the same joke at the Autosport Awards about the food. So he's a fan of recycling.
There we go. Well, we all missed an opportunity where he said it was pantomime season, and we didn't reply, "Oh no, it isn't," which is obviously what we should have done. But anyway, we missed that opportunity. But I think he's kind of trying to diffuse the situation, trying to move it on a little bit. I think it's also interesting as well, FA aren't looking at it, they're not investigating, despite it's obviously a very serious allegation which George Russell made. He said that Max Verstappen told him, "I'm going to crash your effing head into the wall." Perhaps that should have been looked into. It's not. We're moving on. And I think it's time that we do just focus on the racing, perhaps.
Indeed. Well, I mean, I've been looking at nothing but long run times and averages since FP2 finished. So let's do exactly that. And I mean, it is.
Oh, right on you.
Yes. In time with the rubbish coming out of my mouth, the rubbish being disposed over there. But yes, advantage pretty healthily towards McLaren in that constructors battle. So I sort of, on the face of it, or sort of if you just look at the headline times from FP1 and FP2, a day of two halves, with Ferrari leading FP1, McLaren leading FP2. But FP1, even though I'm sure it must have been nice for Charles Leclerc to drive with his brother Arthur on track at the same time. First time in F1 history, and no, the 1971 Argentine Grand Prix doesn't count because not a World Championship race. Must have been nice for Leclerc to have done that and to have led the session, but he missed half the session because he had a battery issue aboard his car. That's got to be changed ahead of the race, and so it will take a 10-place penalty. Makes it much harder for him and Ferrari, therefore, to win the constructors. But yeah, McLaren.
It's all advantage McLaren, isn't it? Now, I mean that 10-place grid penalty around here, where overtaking so hard. That's a big plus, isn't it, for McLaren?
Indeed. I mean, obviously, this is the venue where 14 years ago, Andrea Stella, McLaren team principal, lost the Drivers' World title for Fernando Alonso, who he was then the race engineer of at Ferrari. But if Charles Leclerc can't come through the pack and it's just a one Ferrari sort of challenge in the race with Carlos Sainz, it makes it that much harder for the red team. But yeah, McLaren looking mighty in FP2. Quickest over one lap, not quite so quick in the long run terms. It's actually Lewis Hamilton quickest in the long run stakes for Mercedes, a little bit over Oscar Piastri, a little bit more over Sergio Perez, and then a slightly more. We're talking about a couple of tenths here and there back to Ferrari, but definitely work to do for Ferrari. Obviously, the only caveat, something that Lando Norris has mentioned himself. He thinks all the other engines generally turn down in practice than you'd expect, especially with all the mileage that have been on those parts through the year so far. So yeah, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it's looking pretty.
It's quite interesting, the mentality, isn't it, at McLaren? They've turned everything down in terms of expectation level. So Andrea Stella saying today, not a given that we're going to finish top of this championship table. Lando saying the same thing. It's kind of playing those expectations down. Norris as well said he kind of wants the pressure to be on. He feels like the pressure needs to be there for him to deliver, and it's quite an interesting mindset coming into this weekend, being ahead, but by the slenderest of margins.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they're just doing everything to avoid getting carried away, as I was getting carried away, realising it's my favourite Fall Out Boy song playing in the background there, but there we go. Yeah, it's the classic thing. It's just taking one session at a time, one lap at a time if you've got to, and things may fall their way. But yeah, it's just the only thing that we've sort of been joking about and thinking about is that, like, things have gone wrong this season for McLaren. Like, they're not, and this is probably why they're like, don't get carried away, don't say anything, don't even have a thought of winning the Constructors Championship at this stage, is because things have gone wrong. I mean, we look at the Drivers' Championship, the mistakes, the misfortune, various bits, and it's obviously, I know it's a cliche, it's not done yet. So understandable attitude. But, you know, I mean, even if they were to lose, which would be a spectacular failure, the fact that they were in that position in the first place, you still have to give them credit for that.
Surely we cannot be giving them credit if they managed to throw this away at this stage.
It's sort of yes and no, isn't it? Like, yeah, you would have to say it's a huge own goal, but from where they've come from, like, did we really think last year you'd expect them to win the Constructors Championship? I mean, it was looking like a nailed-on Red Bull coronation again. So the fact they've pulled themselves into this position, made good on the promise of last year, and got into a title fight.
Yeah, it's a fair point, isn't it? After Max won the season opener in Bahrain, we were probably all fearing the worst. Crikey, you know, Red Bull dealing with all this going on in the background, and yet he still comes out and delivers as he did. And also Sergio Perez was going quite well at the start of the year as well. So let's just touch on him. Still no news on whether he's staying or going. Christian Horner pretty telling in the press conference, up to Sergio to make his mind up. Perez is adamant, I've got a contract, I'm staying. Interesting terminology for Christian Horner then to turn around and say it's up to Sergio to decide what he does. So, you know, I still think that there's a lot to be discussed here. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how Perez does this weekend. What sort of mindset is he going to be in, and obviously what happens in the days that follow.
I mean, yeah, it's got a lot of money being earned for contract lawyers written all over it in a certain way. But actually, it started in terms of lap times pretty well for Sergio Perez. Quicker than Max Verstappen over one lap in FP2, and those long run averages that I talked about, he was the quicker Red Bull driver. Which, you know, Max hating his car and his understeer and his setup. So yeah, I mean, it's all relative though. Perez is still only 14th fastest. So is that just the fact that Max isn't in his happiest place? And therefore that's explaining it. But at the very least, it's an encouraging sign. But yeah, it's, I don't know. What was it, 2020 Abu Dhabi, where Perez got signed from Racing Point? Like, that was obviously career high point. Maybe this is sort of the career end point for him.
How do you think the rookies did? Because we had a few of them out there today. Isack Hadjar was one of them in the Red Bull, taking Max Verstappen's car. How impressed were you with him?
I was trackside, so I didn't have a sort of a view of the whole lap, the whole session. But from what I could see at turn 14, made famous, of course, for Nicholas Latifi crashing there in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2021. Yeah, they all seem to be sort of struggling to carry the speed for that particular part of the track. It's very tricky, it's off camber, and it was just noticeable how the much more experienced drivers were able to, I mean, it's particularly when sort of long runs wore on, but they were just able to sweep in from further out, carry that speed through, and all of the rookies sort of consistently, Jack Doohan doing it, obviously Hadjar in the Red Bull, we've got Iwasa in the RB, and the others just finding it ever so slightly more tricky, jittering, having to, you know, rely on climbing over the curbs to do that. So yeah, there was a visual difference in what I was seeing from out there. But yeah, like I said, I don't have the full sort of overview of and all the data all the teams were out.
One driver struggling was Franco Colapinto, did some damage to his car. It's just not gone right for him, has it, over the last couple of races? And, you know, it could end up costing him a seat, whether it be at Red Bull or RB. You know, it looks difficult for him to see him on the grid for next year now.
Massively. I mean, what a turnaround from the Brazilian Grand Prix, you know, before that at the end of the last triple header before the break ahead of Las Vegas, where Horner was going down to Williams and having negotiations and saying we want him effectively, and Williams saying, well, you have to pay for him. Now it just seems the interest has really cooled. They're focused on promoting again from within, which would be Hadjar, and obviously he's still involved in that F2 title fight, and again, pretty important for him to win that. And it's not easy for him to have jumped from F1, FP1 to qualifying in F2. I covered Charles Leclerc in F2 in 2017, and to concentrate on winning that title that year, which was prerequisite, something Ferrari required him to do to earn his F1 promotion. He said, I don't want to do any F1, FP1s until I've won this title. Because he'd done it the year before when he was in GP3 and struggled. There's that challenge of going from one type of car to another. Even a driver as good as Charles Leclerc struggled with that. So yeah, this is an interesting extra dynamic on an important weekend for Hadjar.
Alex, thank you very much. We're out of time. Catch us tomorrow, qualifying. Can't wait.